Hey there, and thanks for watching. So allow me to walk you through our short-term rental acquisition model. Now, this model was built by our own Arturo Parada. Arturo has extensive experience with short-term rentals, and so he was the obvious choice to tackle this project. What you're looking at right now is beta version 1.1, and so this version likely contains errors. Also will be built out as we get input from you. And so please hit our contact us page. Let us know if either there's features you want to add or you notice a bug, and Arturo will get to it and update it in a future version of the model. Now, if you're unfamiliar with a.cre models, we follow a traditional investment banking methodology when we build these models, and we use some best practices that come from that world. And the first is when you open up the file, you're going to find a collection of blue font cells, black font cells, and in some of our models, green font cells, which you won't find in this model, at least not in this version 1.1. Blue font cells are your assumption or your input cells. The creator of the model, Arturo, and all of us, when we build a model, expect you, the user, to change every blue font cell. And you can read more on the versions tab. You'll find a link to the new to a.cre models, read our best practices guide. You can read more about some best practices. But key to this model, and really any real estate financial model, is that if you see a blue font cell, you better change it. Do not expect the value in that cell is representative of anything related to your deal. Okay, so that's number one. The second thing is this model right now in its current state is using annual periods. And so I would consider this a back of the envelope model. There's relatively few inputs, meaning you can run through this very quickly and get a quick sense of whether an opportunity is worth pursuing or not. But it does mean as you get further down the road, you'll either need to expand this model or build your own in order to truly forecast the cash flows of the short-term rental opportunity. Now let's dig into it. The first thing you're going to see when you open up the file is that this has just one worksheet in addition to the versions worksheet, which tracks changes to the model. And in this worksheet, there'll be sections with section headers. The first section being investment description. And these inputs are generally descriptive only. So things like name of the investment. Here we'll just call this Sunset STR. Some address, some city and state, zip code. We probably should add country, which I will do in a future version. You then have property type here, and we've included a list of kind of common property types in the short-term rental space. If you want to change, though, this drop-down menu, what you do is you come down here to the very bottom, you're going to see the data validation section, and you'll find the list of items that are found in that list. And so in that drop-down. So you can either change these or you can just insert, say, a row. And as long as you're inserting it within this range, that will expand the size of the range that's used for this drop-down menu. You can add items. But I believe this is fairly comprehensive, this list. Similar with the platform that you expect to place the short-term rental on. So we have a fairly extensive list. We have other as well if you're going to do this on your own or there's some other platform in the market that you're in. The next is number of units. Now, in this case, I defaulted to 1 unit. So this is just a single family home that I'm analyzing, but you have the ability to increase this and that will flow through the model. Now, in a future version, there's some discussion internally about turning this into a portfolio model such that each one of these worksheets is a single unit, and then you can get into more granularity around the unit. But as of version 1.1, you change the number of units in that cell. And then you have total rentable area, and this is just a single unit. I'd call it 1,080 square feet, for instance. Next, we get to your analysis start date. Okay, this is when you would expect to take ownership or close on the asset. That then flows through to your header row here, your date header. So in this case, let's go ahead and put July 1 of 2025. That's our analysis start. And then we're going to hold this for some period of time. Now, the model right now is limited to up to 10 years. let's say this is a 5-year hold. And then we are going to analyze the sale price based on what would happen, what hypothetically would happen in year 6. We call that the reversion year. Okay. Then we have, again, some black font cells. You'll see this one here, right? Reversion year is automatically calculated for you right now. This model assumes that the next buyer is going to look at their first year when they're analyzing what they would pay for the asset. We have some debt constraints, and those are driven now. If we come over here to the far right, I'm jumping around a little bit, but this is important. You have your loan assumptions. So the first 4 are your inputs. So what is your loan to cost? What is the fixed interest rate? Is there any interest only period? In this case, I've said no. And then on what term is the loan amortized? Okay, so, or for what length of time? Generally, you're seeing on a residential loan like a 30-year amortization, but you might see 25 or 20, you might even see 40 in some rare cases. Here, I'm just using a default 30-year amortization. And then the output from these inputs are shown here. So you get a sense of, actually shown here, you get a sense of what the loan amount is, $315,000. That's driven by that input. You've got what your payment is, assuming no interest only, $1,991. Now that's just principal and interest. That does not include taxes or insurance. That happens later. And then this is if you have an interest only payment, what that payment amount is. And then you have what the loan payoff is at the end of your 5-year hold, just shy of $295,000 in this case. Now here coming to the center, we have just some basic acquisition assumptions. The first is an input, that's the price. We entered that there. Now the closing costs as a percentage of that price are actually entered down here. See, we call that acquisition cost because that is not just your closing cost, but also might be your due diligence costs associated with acquiring the asset. It may be that you or some group is paid a fee to perform the work. And so in this case, 2%. There's also here a renovation and furnishings, and this is assumed to happen in what we call time 0. That's essentially right at the beginning of the investment. These cash flows occur. So you've got a purchase price, again, coming out of this input. You've got your acquisition cost, again, which is a percentage of your purchase price. You've got just a raw renovation and furnishings number, and then you have a funding fees number. And this is called loan origination fees, or the cost to acquire debt in this case. Okay. And then you see some just metrics up top. Again, this section is now key assumptions and return metrics. So you've got some basic operating metrics, year 1 revenue, year 1 expenses, and then on your reversion or your sale at the end of a 5-year hold, what your exit cap rate is and what your closing costs are. And those inputs happen down below. So as we look here, this is now our cash flows. We can track how our cash flows are working. Some inputs within each one of these cash flow sections. We use a framework at a.cre, investment cash flows. Okay, those are the costs to acquire some string of cash flows into the future. So in this case, generally it's a purchase price, some costs associated with that purchase, your renovation and furnishing, funding fees. And then we have some net loan proceeds, and that tells us how much equity or how much cash we have to come up with in order to close this. In this case, $275,730 for a $525,000 investment with some fees and renovation and furnishing. Okay, so that's our investment cash flows. We then have operating cash flows, and these are theoretically the inflows, right? The revenue, less expenses, less any debt service that we pay on a loan from the investment cash flows. And here we use a hospitality framework, ADR, average daily rate concept, occupancy concept, to get a revenue per available unit and a total revenue number. Now, because there's just one unit, the average daily rate relates to just the one unit. And then you can adjust per year your occupancy rate. You can adjust the ADR in year 1 such that you then can revise the ADR growth rate. So how does that ADR, that average daily rate, change year over year? And that then gives us our total revenue per year. There's a discussion internally for the next model to include other income. So if you want to throw in cleaning fees or admin fees or other sorts of fees, or maybe you have a program where you also sell tour packages or something associated with your short-term rental, those would come in another income section that will be in a future version of the model. Now, next we flow from revenue into our operating expenses. And we have utilities and maintenance, and that is a number for our first year and then some growth rate each year thereafter. Likewise, in cleaning and housekeeping, some number in year one with some growth rate each year thereafter. We have platform and management fees. And so you'll see that there's an in-cell label here, but this is simply a numeric value. So I just enter 10, for instance, and that will automatically update to 10 and add that in-cell label. So don't get confused. Don't write 10% of revenue. If you write that, it no longer is a numeric value. In fact, you'll see it if I go 10% of, if I write that, it will error this out. That's because this is no longer a numeric value. All I do is type 10 and so forth, okay? Then we have insurance. Again, this is an input cell. Now you'll notice sometimes we'll throw in a formula in these input cells. That's because oftentimes those are quick ways of getting to a input value, but it's still an input. So it can either be a formula that represents your input. In this case, I said, okay, in my market, I'm going to say that insurance is 1.5% of acquisition costs. I'm not pretending that is true. In this case, these are simply placeholder values. Then we have property taxes. And this, again, is a percentage of your acquisition price and then some growth rate. That is how it's flown. And this is an in-cell label. So again, you would just simply type, let's say, if we're in Texas, you might go 2.25, and that now just updates. So I'm going to go back to 1.25 here. Actually, I think I was at 1. Yeah, let's keep it there. Next, we have CapEx reserve. And you'll notice that we include CapEx reserve above net operating income. That was just a methodology decision made on Arturo's part based on his experience. But CapEx is meant to, it's repairs and maintenance keeps are expenses that have a useful life less than a year. CapEx generally has a useful life longer than a year. But in this case, we put it above the line because this is necessary to maintain the existing condition of the asset, and it's fairly conventional in short-term rentals as well as in apartments to put a CapEx reserve in your total operating expenses. So we take revenue, we subtract OpEx, that gets us to a net operating income. We then subtract out debt service, and that gets us to a cash flow after financing. And then there are some metrics here that we can track. We've got a debt service coverage ratio. We have a debt yield, and then we have a cash-on-cash return. So cash-on-cash return being cash flow after financing divided by the cash or equity that the partnership or individual invested into the opportunity. Finally, we have reversion cash flow. That is the sale or the value of the asset at the end of our analysis period. And we're going to use a cap rate concept in order to value the asset at the end of the analysis. In this case, we assume here a 5.3 cap rate, some selling costs. This is probably going to be closer to, say, 4, and then some loan payoff. But again, we've got inputs. Then all of that flows into an unlevered cash flow line here. Those are our cash flows before debt. And that way we can get some unlevered return, which you'll see up above. And then we have our levered cash flow. Again, these are our cash flows after debt. Now, finally, below we have a sensitivity analysis section. So if you want to do scenarios around, say, what if I only held it for 5 years? This is how you sensitize exit cap rate versus hold. I only want to hold it for 3 years, and I'm going to exit at a 6 cap. You'd see that the equity multiple is a 2.4. If you're unfamiliar with the concept, equity multiple is basically how much your cash grows over your hold period. Here then we have sensitivity on exit cap rate versus purchase price, and this is a IRR result. So if we paid only $500,000 for it and we had an exit cap of a 5, it's an IRR of 34. If we paid $700,000 and we had a exit of 6, then we have a negative 1.78 IRR. Okay, and then finally, loan cost is a percentage of debt. These are just some placeholder sensitivity analysis that Arturo added. And if you're familiar with two variable data tables in Excel, you can quickly add your own sensitivity as well. So now with all of your inputs entered, what you're most likely going to care about are your returns now, right? So you're going to come up and you're going to look at your returns and you'll see, okay, before debt, this yields just shy of 20% unlevered IRR. With debt, I'm at 29%. Some pretty healthy multiples. Here's my profit before and after debt, and here's my average cash on cash return. So again, this is our short-term rental acquisition model, beta version 1.1. Love to hear your feedback. Send it to adventuresinCRE.com/contact-us. I'll include a link in the description of the video. Love to hear either input, or if you see issues with the model, Arturo will get right on it. Otherwise, thanks for your time.